Hey everyone, welcome back to Berlin Noir, and today we are going to be starting off by updating something that a lot of you have asked me to do, and that is the Berlin Palace. So this is the aerial view here from the 20s that we got. As you can see, this building here is in fact the Berlin Palace, but what we got here, this vanilla looking building, doesn't look anything like it. And that's because it was really only ever a placeholder. It's something that I did off camera. I don't even remember when. It's just really to fill in because it's a really big space here, and I needed something to fill in there since at the time there was no asset of the Berliner Schloss, so I just used PO with that vanilla building and plopped it down, called it a day, and yeah, it's been there for quite a while. And you guys have been saying for also quite some time to, do the Berlin Palace, uh, fix it, update it, whatever. Since this asset has been out for a little bit, but I've been hesitant, and that's because, as you can see, this asset is quite large, to say the least. I had to destroy a lot of the stuff directly beneath it, as you can see. I destroy even more and just basically rebuild everything directly below it. Since, yeah, like I said, this asset is massive. I thought the little plot of land that I set aside for the palace a long time ago was going to be large enough because, as you saw with the vanilla version of this, there was a lot of room around it, especially on the left side. I had a big courtyard looking plaza in the front, and honestly, I liked how the original version looked. And I mean that from, more or less just a aesthetic objective perspective, right? Obviously, there's a real asset for the palace, so compared to the real thing, it doesn't look good really at all. But just if there weren't an actual asset for the palace, or if I were just building this cool little palace looking building, I think it looked fine. So I for a second considered just copying it, setting it aside, and maybe using it somewhere else in the city. But I couldn't really think of anything that's looked really anything like that, or anything that I could have used it for. So ultimately, that's when I just decided to completely, just trash it and forget about it. Even though, like I said, I did kind of like how it looked, but nonetheless, obviously it had to go so we could actually put the real thing here. And yeah, I know many of you are excited that we're finally getting to this, and I have to say, after putting it down, building around it, it looks really nice. It really brings this area together for sure. But so, anyways, so what we're doing here on screen is detailing the, I guess, southern side of the building uh, with these little grass patches. I liked how these turned out. I liked how I did the little circles on the ends with the flower bushes and then lined it with that and popped a little tree on both sides with a little statue in the center. I think that turned out nice. But so this I think is the main courtyard, plaza, whatever you want to call it, in the palace. And from all the pictures that I saw of it, it was like completely empty. I think there might have been maybe a small statue in the center from some of the pictures that I looked at, but I decided just to completely keep it empty. Uh, I thought it made sense maybe for like some sort of military parade or something in there for the Kaiser or whatever, some maybe a state funeral. I have no idea. It made sense to have it open and not really be cluttered with anything. But for the other plaza, or courtyard, I guess is more accurate, on the smaller one on the other side of the building, I wanted to do something a little more fancier since there is. I'll show a picture here. This is a really nice picture. But you can see ever so slightly, it's mostly cut off, but there's some fancy patterns in that plaza, that section of the building with some triangular looking shapes. So I wanted to do something like that, and that's what we are doing here right now. I decided to use curb networks to just kind of outline exactly the shapes, how I wanted everything to be, And because I mean, the curbs, I've done this before with other things, nothing quite like this, but curbs are nice because you can lower them into the ground, obviously. So they're, from a distance, they look flat. They don't look like they're sticking out really anything. Obviously, up close, you'll see a little something, but from a distance, they look perfectly flat. It just kind of looks like a white line. And I know there's like white line networks, or of course, even white line decals on the network or on the workshop. But I didn't use those since, I mean, for one, I wasn't subscribed to them already. But I'd say more so is the fact that because these curves are ever so slightly raised up, I can use pavement or the like pavement networks, and I messed around even with decals converted to PO, as you can see right now, and use that to my advantage. So since there is a ever so slight height difference, I can raise and lower that, and then as you see now, kind of distinguish different textures very easily. And then that fairly thick white line looking thing really sets it apart. So I liked how this turned out. Honestly, as I was making this reminded me of a lot of the patterns from like the local Native American tribes around me where I live. Very similar stuff, a lot of triangular things. Uh, Also reminds me of the patterns found on diamondback rattlesnakes. So perhaps that's why it kind of turned out like this. It still looks somewhat similar to what I kind of saw on the pictures and stuff that were in this little courtyard here. But yeah, like I said, I really liked how this turned out. There's different textures with that pavement versus the kind of plain pavement beneath it. And yeah, I think it turned out really cool, and definitely considering the other side is completely plain, it definitely adds something to the palace that's pretty unique looking. But so now we are on the other side of the palace, and this is something that I initially didn't notice, but in real life back then, this area was really large, the road, I should say. The road just kind of like curved in to that little area there with the kind of like that little nook that goes into towards the palace, and that was all just completely roads. And so I initially messed around with placing a road there, and I tried using the asphalt decal, but the decal didn't really look right. For one, the decal itself, the stones that were, like the stone texture, I should say, was sized differently than the actual stone texture that I have from my roads, so it looked off that way. Plus, I don't know, it just didn't really seem like a good idea. So I got rid of the road, and what I decided to do, since I really couldn't think of any other way to do this, at least with the assets and networks that I had available to me at the time, I'm sure there's something I could have found on the workshop, but I didn't really feel like wanting to exit out and subscribe to more things, since I already have quite a lot of assets for the series. I'm trying to keep it simple. So I just decided to plop down the asphalt surfaces here, just in the different shapes, drag them across, and make it look like it's all just one big road. So obviously, up close, you can see there's that little curve, or curb, I should say, right? You can see that it's raised up ever so slightly. But if you start to zoom out at any distance, that mostly goes away. So it really just looks like one large road, and that's what I was going for. Another cool thing that I added here these are actually vanilla assets. I tried to convert them to PO. You might have saw there a second ago. Unfortunately, they weren't compatible with PO because I wanted to hide the cannonballs next to them since there's a lot of them. But the one picture I showed already had some little artillery pieces, kind of just like this on the side, kind of pointing out towards the road. It looked cool, something unique. Obviously, I think the picture that I showed there was from 1920. So obviously from World War One. So I don't know, it was a cool little addition there, and like I said, it's a vanilla asset, so it does have those cannonballs next to it, so it looks a little kind of weird, I guess, but I think it still looks nice overall. Adds some more character to the piece and everything. But another thing I didn't realize up until now that I'm doing it, but the road really should be extended into the palace. Since I did notice that on the pictures. I just at first I didn't notice it, but obviously you'd need official vehicles coming in and out of the palace. I don't know if the if the king was going to go somewhere or travel, whatever, obviously he's got to go out. So I imagine that's what this would be used for. Also, like I kind of mentioned earlier, maybe for like military stuff, parades, stuff like that. I imagine they would use these gate entrances on the side to go in and out. And it looks cool having the roads go in like that. So I'm happy how that turned out. But lastly, just finishing up some very simple detailing. I put those two horse statues, which I used on the other side as well, but they're nice because when you convert them to PO, the actual statue part itself on top doesn't disappear like most do. So, and it's generic enough. It's just a guy on a horse, right? So you see that everywhere, I guess. So I use that there and some bushes. Nothing too much. Again, keeping it simple. But yeah, that's mostly going to do it for the actual palace. And since it is a relatively short episode, as you see, I did add one more thing that we're going to do for the rest of the episode, and that will be coming up in a second. So to finish off today's episode, we got one more building kind of close nearby, and that is this. It's a district court in Berlin, and really the reason why I decided to do this, because I mentioned this before, this little area has been kind of empty for a while. I haven't touched it, been saving it to build this building, maybe hoping an actual asset would come out in the workshop that look a little more like it, but it hasn't. So I decided just pull the trigger and try my best at making something that looks remotely like it. And it wasn't a super big deal because no one's mentioned me that I should build this. I haven't really heard much about this before. I just found it on my own. But the reason I wanted to was purely just because of this. So this is the entranceway to the court, and I don't know. I haven't really this. I mean, this is like very beautiful for sure. I mean, the the tall ceiling and the arches going up, the colors, everything. I would love to see that in person. And like I said, I'd never heard of this before, or never seen a picture of that before until I found it myself, which seems surprising. I mean, I guess it's a court, so people don't really want to go there. If you're there, you're probably not very happy. And I guess it's not really a touristy thing since it is a court. I mean, I'm sure a tourist could walk in the front just to look at it. But yeah, it really caught my eye, and I figured I'd try and create it. You did see me at the very start mess around with PO to change the color of the roof. And I have to give full credit to that technique to Varampositor, which I guess, I don't know if he learned it from, but he's referenced a video from Titan. And yeah, I had absolutely no idea that was a thing. I thought when you change the color of a asset, it changed the color of obviously the entire asset, whatever the creator, I guess, I don't really know the specifics into it, but sometimes it would just change the wall color, sometimes it would just change the roof color, sometimes it would change everything. So it's kind of random. So I had no idea that you could actually go in as a text feature and actually use a just kind of thing to cover up whatever part of the texture that you want, in this case the roof, and then change the color of it. And that's kind of a game changer in many instances. I guess for one, you mentioned it to do with the previous episode with the Charlottenburg Palace. I tried. Unfortunately, when I converted it to PO, the vast majority of the building disappeared since I used the entire building asset, not the tiny little pieces to make it, which is an option. So if I want to adjust the colors on that roof, since the roof is definitely a little lighter than it should be, I'd have to subscribe to all the small buildings and then do it that way. But I'm already pushing the subscription limit, so I don't know if I'm going to be doing that, unfortunately. Maybe eventually, we'll see. But for now, I did want to try out the technique, and I figured this would be good since I didn't know any building that had that reddish type of roof. And I have to say, this red color roof, I do change quite a lot. I wasn't satisfied, and honestly, still, I'm not really fond of the color of the roof that I set up. You'll see in the final cinematic since it does change. I don't know. Well, let me know what you think of the color of the roof. I was having trouble matching the color to the color they're building in real life, but also balancing the fact that it's a pretty sizable building, and I don't want it sticking out like a sore thumb. I want it to, since it's not a super important building, I don't want it looking as though it's a really important building because, like I said, never heard about it until I found it myself. But yeah, so anyways, this little segment here that kind of looks a little weird with the PO job that I did on it, I decided to hide something ugly with something intentionally ugly, and that is somewhat of like a little construction thing going on the roof. I decided to add these little wooden planks and make it look like, just little things on the roof. Perhaps people are repairing a segment of the roof, or I don't know, something else, working on something on the roof. So I wanted to lay those down. And I put this little brick wall there to make it look like maybe they're painting a segment of the wall there. Just trying to look like something is intentionally wrong, right? Since, again, it looked a little weird the way I did the PO and I couldn't really find a better way to do it, so I did this. And just adding some little props on there to, again, make it look like people are actually working on it. There's these nice market props with these just people standing up, not really doing anything, but just to make it look like, again, they're working on the roof. And I think it turned out, kind of cool. Since it's a really small thing, probably not going to notice it, except in this episode in the cinematics. But it turned out kind of cool, and like I said, it definitely covers the kind of wonky PO job on the corner there. So yeah, that turned out pretty neat. But so, anyways, I guess for the rest of the episode, just got some simple detailing of this building, the center little courtyards here. Really nothing too much. But so hopefully you guys are enjoying us being back in Berlin Noir. Like I said last time, it's been a very long time and definitely excited to get going and working in this city again. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode and finally getting to the Berlin Palace. You'll see in the cinematics it looks pretty great. But if you did enjoy this episode, definitely give the video a thumbs up. Helps me out a ton. Drop a comment, anything that you might want to see built or whatever it may be. And if you're new and you happen to make it this far, then definitely subscribe. And let's grow the channel together. But anyways, we'll see you all maybe next week, maybe 2 weeks, we'll see. But either way, see you all in another video.